On July 29th, Riot is going to be launching League of Legends Classic. I never thought we'd see the day after they shut Chrono Shift down, but here we finally are. This is going to drop you back into the game as it was played in Season 3 roughly, complete with the old Green Summoner's Rift, the original Runes of Masteries, Influence Points, and 60 champions swinging around their long dead kits. Riot has been careful to call it a greatest hits build rather than just a frozen snapshot using Season 3 though, as though it is the foundation for League Classic. Riot have picked many things from seasons before that, which they think embody that classic feel, and this is going to be a crazy thing to be able to experience once again. I know I was playing well before Season 3 and remember many of these early champions, as I'm sure many of you guys do, but there will equally be so many people with thousands of games in League of Legends who have never experienced this stuff. So before you load into your first game of League Classic, wonder why the game is so slow paced, why your support is broke, and where, well, the majority of the things in the jungle are, we should talk a little bit about what the main differences are between Classic and Modern. So this will be a breakdown of the major features which will change significantly, and by the end of it, you should have a pretty good idea of what League Classic will look like. First of all though, I want to talk a bit more about Season 3 and what that actually means for this version of the game. Season 3 ran in 2013. This was the era of the first real esports boom of League of Legends, the season that gave us SK Telecom's Dynasty opening act, and a version of Summoner's Rift that looked nothing like the one you find now. The Modern League map rework started off in November of 2014, which isn't terribly modern when you think about it, but that just goes to show for how long we've had that version of the map. The old Rift just had that more old school vibe to it though, and I am really happy to see it return. Also, as mentioned at the start, Riot is very much curating this experience, not just restoring a database backup. For example, we have support items such as Heart of Gold that give gold per 5, which were removed at the start of pre-season of Season 3. And these are in the game alongside warding totems and sweeping lenses, which did not arrive until Season 4. So if you play back then and you think, hang on, was this in the game during Season 3? The answer may well be no, but Riot have just decided to put it in for the sake of fun. And they have been listening to feedback on versions of champions and items that people want to play too, such as, for example, initially they put the original version of Katarina in the game, which I've done a video on retrospectively, and then a lot of people gave feedback saying that actually the version they wanted to play was the one with Sinister Steel, where her W had the little AoE around her, so Riot have gone and brought that version of Cat back into the game. All in all though, just know League Classic is around Season 3 or things that happened prior to that mainly. But the biggest thing you'll notice when you log in is that the pace of the game is slow, and that's nowhere more noticeable than with gold income. It is painfully, wonderfully slow. Modern League just throws gold at you from a dozen directions. You generate more over time, you get comeback bounties when you fall behind, you have turret plates and the crystals to chip away from as well. Season 3 had pretty much none of that, and because gold income was so slow, really getting those last hits in is even more important than ever. You really farmed and kept up with your enemies or you would fall behind, and when you get behind you'll find that more often than not against equally skilled opponents, if there is such a thing, it's going to be much more difficult to come back in League Classic. And the difference in gold income will be the most notable on supports. The modern support items, such as the one involved with quests or the ones that give you gold when you last hit occasionally, they won't exist. Instead, supports will be expected to build gold-generating items such as the aforementioned Heart of Gold, Lucky Pick, Philosopher's Stone, and so on. These can then be built into supportive items as well, but just know that supports are a lot more supportive, and the whole idea of having carry supports in the game during this season doesn't really exist. Another system which will see major changes will be to Vision. So Modern Vision is pretty simple. You get your trinket on a cooldown, and you can swap it out between the yellow, red, or blue one. Now Classic does appear to keep that free version of the trinket, but on top of that there are way more ways to generate Vision. Starting off with an item which I'm super excited to make a return actually, and that's Sightstone. Back in the day this was your support lifeline. It was kind of the precursor to support items that let you drop wards now. You build Sightstone out of a ruby crystal, and each time you went back to base you would generate a few wards. With the first version of Sightstone you can have 2 wards out on the map from this item, and with Ruby Sightstone, the upgraded version, you can have 3. Equally, on some champions, this is actually a very cheap item that can be nice to build. For example, on the likes of Lee Sin when you're jungling, I remember always building a Sightstone back in the day because ward hops are just so useful for him, and with the basic version you can get 2 ward hops drops every single time you base. On top of that, the rewards you also can buy and carry around that take up an inventory slot. These are the old sight wards, the green ones that simply reveal an area, and the pink ward makes a return that reveals an area and detects stealth on top of it, so it'll light up enemy wards and nearby stealthed units if there are any of them. On top of that, Riot have also put Oracle's Elixir back in the game. This is a consumable you can drink, and it will act as though you're a living, breathing pink ward walking around for a few minutes. There are even some items such as Wriggle's Lantern that can generate a ward too. It's like Riot have put pretty much every single version of warding ever into the game mode, so generating vision is going to be really simple, but then again you're going to have so many options to destroy vision too. It should make for an interesting game. Another major system which you'll be working out before you load into the game will be your runes and masteries. So the modern rune system was an update that came in Season 7. Before that you had two separate systems that stacked on top of each other, and they both took quite a long time to unlock back in the day, you know. So runes were things you bought with influence points, which was a currency earned by playing. These runes were divided into marks, seals, glyphs, and quintessences. So you would go out, farm your influence points, and then gradually work towards a full rune page. And different champions absolutely wanted different types of runes. So eventually you would want to unlock pretty much everything in there, and that would take you a lot of games. On top of the rune system were masteries, which is a lot more familiar to the system we have today. This was a 30-point talent tree split across offense, defense, and utility. Back then you'd earn a point per account level up to 30, and you would lock them into pretty cookie-cutter builds depending on what kind of role you were playing in the game. However, with these systems returning and it being a bit more for fun of a game mode, Riot aren't going to make you grind for anywhere near as long as you would have had to back in the day. You'll start off with a base mastery page, and you'll be unlocking various runes as you play and earning influence points much faster. So you will still have to unlock these things gradually over time, but again, the grind won't be as bad as it used to be. Next up is about itemization. So modern itemization for the last several years has largely been about passive effects that define your identity. You buy an item and it does something huge automatically, and that effect becomes part of your kit. In Season 3, items were quite different, and active items were absolutely king. You'll have the likes of Deathfire Grasp making a return, an item that nukes an enemy and then increases their damage taken, Youmuu's Ghostblade with its burst of movement and attack speed, Zhonya's Hourglass is still there, though the arm guard that built into it didn't have a Zhonya's effect on it, by the way. Randuin's Omen for an area slow, Hextech Gunblade for a damaging attack, and they're even bringing back items such as Twin Shadows that send out the two spooky ghosts to hunt down enemies, Ohnwrecker to turn off turrets for a bit. I'm not sure if that was ever really built by anyone, but hey, we're getting it back, and even a version of Banner of Command where you can promote a minion, and they will happily run down the lane for you and farm gold for you. Probably one of my favourite returning items will be Wriggle's Lantern. For junglers, this thing is the whole package. It has attack damage, lifesteal, bonus damage against monsters, and extra gold income. But what made it really special was what it turned into. After 30 large monster kills, your Wriggle's Lantern automatically transformed into Feral Flare, an infinitely scaling on-hit jungle item, which back in the day had to be removed because it was just too difficult to balance well. But if you're playing things that care about on-hit, such as Warwick or Xin Zhao, you have to try this item out. Now speaking of junglers, the jungle is absolutely going to be the single most changed part of the map. We can start off by talking about the plants you'll find in Modern League. Blast Cones, Scryer's Bloom, Honeyfruit, as well as their upgraded versions depending on what type of map it is. None of those existed in Season 3. In fact, some parts of the map have been entirely changed as well, such as there being a wall at the top lane tower on the red side where you can't sneak around for a gank. And then there is the subject of the Rift Herald, or rather the total absence of one. And the grubs as well, they're not in the game either. The Baron Pit will sit empty until the Baron arrives. Oh, and there's only one version of the Baron too, not the 3 different ones we have in Modern League. And then there's the Dragon, and it's just the Dragon. There are no Elemental Drakes, there's no Elder Drake. You kill the Dragon, it gives your whole team a bunch of gold, and that is it. Don't get me wrong, it's still a very important objective. We went over how important gold was earlier, but yeah, it's not going to give you benefits on top of the gold. Certain jungle camps will also be different on top of that compared to what you're used to seeing. And it is also worth broadly saying that in Season 3, the jungle just hit harder. Camps did more damage relative to your power, and sustain was not as common as it is in Modern League. This meant far fewer champions could survive through their first few clears without getting terribly behind. This isn't really the case in Modern League, where you can jungle on stuff like Karthus or Brand or Jace and it's just no problem. Try doing that in League Classic and see how it goes on your first clear. The jungle back then was made for champions who were supposed to jungle, things like Lee Sin, Warwick, Nunu, champions who had massive amounts of sustain built into their kit. And if you pick a jungler who isn't really meant to be there into one of these guys, they are going to absolutely run over you if they know how to invade, so be careful for that. And things will be different for laners too, because there was no turret plating or the crystals on turrets that could be chipped away at. In fact, turrets in general took a lot longer to take down. And because of all these factors, games just ran longer too. It wasn't uncommon to see games to go 40 or even 50 minutes back in the day, and this is because it just took such a long time to really get out of that laning phase. There's a reason why in Modern League they push you towards objectives super hard and make it so you have to go and fight for them or you will lose. This didn't really exist so much back in the day, so people just sat happily in their lanes farming away until they had several items, and then you sort of gradually all grew together at mid lane and started fighting. And the final thing that will be different, of course, that ties everything together will be the old champion kits. So Classic is launching with a roster of 60 champions, around 40 from 2009, plus 20 more handpicked champions from the years leading up to 2013. Riot have confirmed some other champions will also be releasing for League Classic post-launch too, such as Akali or Graves. And future updates for League Classic will be shaped by a community voting system Riot calls the Council, where the higher your summoner level, the more power your voting has. But there are so many champions with just vastly different kits, such as Old Sion, Old Gragas, and the version of Twisted Fate they picked has what is his modern ultimate on a basic ability, and this was absolutely not about in Season 3. And there will be so many champions to try out, from Old Graves becoming a proper AD carry again, Mordekaiser being the master of metal, Urgot with his homing acid hunters, and just so many more. Either way, the champions and their old kits will be the real treasure of this game mode. Every one of these champions will be a little story about how the game used to be, and a different version of them which you may have never seen or will finally have the chance to revisit. All in all, when you strip away the turret plates, the plants from the jungle, the bounty system, the elemental drakes, the mythic items, and the streamlined free runes, you're left with a game which has much slower pacing and fewer safety nets when you fell behind. Vision will be a lot more involved than it is in the modern game, and everyone will be expected to do their part, of course. Runes themselves are a grind before you even got in the game, and falling behind will cost you the game because there'll be way less to pull you back into it. If you only know Modern League, those conveniences will be really baked into how you play the game. And let me tell you, if you run into mid lane on your Orianna and start spamming your abilities, you will be amazed how fast you are and having to go back to the base. Make sure you're asking your jungler for the second blue buff, by the way. That was very common practice back in the day. Overall though, during my time reviewing Chrono Shift and what was done there, Riot really made it seem as though they never thought League Classic would be worth a go, so I'm equally surprised and excited to finally give it a proper go on July 29th. And if you're looking forwards to it too, that should give you some idea of how the game will be just a little bit different from Modern League. So let me know which champion you're looking forward to playing the most in the comments down below, and as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.